The Culture Pop podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop podcast. I'm Steve Mason, along with Sue 𝐓𝐿𝐄. This is the show where we talk about everything happening in the world of pop culture. Great guest today, actor Rocky Carroll, who's a regular on NCIS, has been for 17 years. He's also done unbelievable Broadway work, including the piano lesson on Broadway, the great August Wilson play. So we'll talk to him coming up. In the meantime, Subaru, everybody over Thanksgiving went to the movies. The 5-day Thanksgiving weekend generated $422 million. The leader at the box office right now is Wicked, as of Saturday, December the 7th, $285 million. Moana 2 at $248, and Gladiator 2 at $120 million. It is to the point where the CEO of AMC Theaters tweeted this during the holiday weekend. He said, Americans are pouring into movie theaters this holiday weekend for Moana 2, Wicked, and Gladiator 2. So many appealing movies in theaters. Be part of a national phenomenon. Catch a flick at AMC. So they're into it. Good week for the business. I have a lot of friends that work either owning theaters or in distribution. I'm happy that everybody is successful. And we went to the movies this holiday weekend, right?
We did. And, you know, they've been having these testimonials during the trailers or right before the trailers, where actors are thanking people for coming out to the theater and supporting films and supporting going out to see a movie. Which I did, never seen that before. So it's kind of.
Well, I think now, because the theater business is where it is, there's some gratitude for people that are still willing to get dressed, get in their car, drive to a movie, buy the ticket, eat the popcorn, enjoy the film, go home, talk about it with other people. There's a lot of steps there. And people aren't necessarily willing to do it. They put on their jammies and they watch the movie at home.
So I had a weird thing happen. I tried to see Wicked before I went on my camping trip the day after Thanksgiving, and it was only the first row. It was like, there's no way in the world.
Oh, yeah.
So I figured, okay, I'll see it when I come home. So I didn't see it the day I came home because it was late and it was like hours of driving home. So I went the next day and, I look online and I see what time it's playing and I go to the theater. I got there, I said, let me get there early just in case I have to deal with, getting a crappy seat.
Right. And
the times were different than they were online.
Huh.
And I was, thank God that I got there early.
Yeah.
And the guy said, I guess I got there and it was around 12 o'clock. And he said, do you want the 11:45 movie? And I said, no, because I probably missed some of it. And he says, no, it's still in previews. He said, but it's in 3D. So I saw Wicked in 3D.
So did I.
Oh, wow. I'd never seen anything in 3D.
I like movies in 3D.
It was great.
Especially this one, I thought was perfect for 3D. Let's talk a little bit about Wicked. The untold story of the witches of Oz. Cynthia Erivo plays Elphaba. She's the green one. And then the popular one, Ariana Grande, plays Glinda. And it is them sort of discovering their powers and what it's like to be different from Elphaba's perspective. What were your thoughts?
I'm usually not a big blockbuster kind of movie-going person. I like small movies, like Complete Unknown.
Yes.
and Nora. You know, I don't like the big films. But I have to say, it totally lived up to the hype. I saw the play. I really liked the play. I know you weren't that crazy
I
about the
hated the
play.
play. I hated
Yeah.
the play.
I didn't hate the play. I thought the play was fun. But just to see what they were able to accomplish filmic wise, it was so pretty. It was colorful. It had a Barbie feel to it a little bit. It had a Harry Potter feel to it a little bit.
Yeah.
I just thought it was such a beautiful movie. I love the story. I love the music. The casting was great. Ariana Grande, if she was ever born to play a role, this was it.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Bailey. I mean, everybody was so good in it. And the story was really, really fun.
You know, it's a great old-fashioned movie musical, and it feels like it came from the 30s or the 40s with the colors and the choreography and sort of a Busby Berkeley thing going on. It feels like I mean, this is high praise, but I think it warrants it. This is the Wizard of Oz for this generation. And I thought so much. John M. Chu is the director. He also directed In the Heights, and he had a couple of great scenes in there. He had the neighborhood stuff with everybody, the choreography, and then in the pool, there's a big sequence. There's a lot of that vibe to it. I really, really loved both of the actors. I thought Ariana Grande, I'm telling you, she might win Best Supporting Actor for that. She may win Best Supporting Actress because she is that good. And Cynthia Erivo is not far behind. She's definitely getting nominated for Best Actress. And Sue, I think it's one of just a couple of movies that could win Best Picture this year. I think it is to that level, that good. The message I love, if you're a little bit different, you're still okay, you can defy gravity, all that stuff. The end, you know that very last note? Can you do the last note? There, see? Everybody's doing the last note. And I was genuinely moved at the end of that. I thought, you know, as she's flying away, spoiler, but you know the music. But as she's, you know, as she's doing her thing, that last song, Defying Gravity, is just absolutely beautiful. And I love this movie from beginning to end. It will be one of my top couple of movies of this year. We'll do our best movies on an upcoming show, but this will definitely be on my list. And congratulations to everybody who put that project together because it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. Meanwhile, Gladiator II came out. So Gladiator II is directed by Ridley Scott, who has never won an Oscar. And coming into this, I said to myself, all right, 78 years old. He's made so many great movies, you know, from Blade Runner to Alien to, I mean, on and on and on. And I thought, okay, this is the perfect spot for him to win Best Director. The movie is great. It's fun. I think it is an excellent successor to the original film, which won Best Picture, because Lucius is played by Paul Mescal. He's got to go into the Coliseum to save his mother, played by Connie Nielsen, honor his father, played by Russell Crowe. That was Maximus from the original movie. I thought solid popcorn movie. There is a lot of gore, but there are sharks. And you know how I feel about sharks. They're fascinating.
They are fascinating, and you warn me about them every time I have a triathlon.
You gotta watch out if you're in
gotta watch
open
out
water.
for sharks.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that I really, really loved about the film, and it was even before the live action started, was the opening titles. Do you remember the opening titles? It was it was animated, and it was just such a great intro.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah,
going into the film. It was just very artistic, and you know, just the little things like that. I love it. They go a long way for me. You know, sitting in editing bays all the years that I have, when an editor does something really, really different with something that's so mundane, you know.
Right.
But I didn't really remember a lot of the first film, and a part of me even thought if we weren't talking about it, I may not have even really cared to see it.
Yeah.
But I really liked it. I really thought the story worked. And the casting of it was great.
Yeah, Paul
mean-
Mescal is such a good, and Pedro Pascal, I don't know, he's
so good.
like, this is going to sound stupid. He's like the Snoop of acting. Everybody loves, I mean, he's just so, Pedro Pascal is such a likable guy. I've seen him in so many, and he's just like, everybody loves Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, and he has such a range too. I mean, I remember the first time I saw him was in Narcos, which was such a great, great series. And then, you see him do something like even he was in Game of Thrones. All of a sudden he's
Yes.
like everywhere. The Last of Us.
Oh, The
And
Last of Us, he's so great.
He's so good.
Did you
yeah,
watch The Last of Us?
I did.
Oh, yeah. Season 2's coming out this year.
Oh, wow.
They're in
Cool.
2025. Yeah, I love that show.
So I guess we haven't seen the last of them.
No, not yet. So Gladiator 2, big, spectacular, big battle sequences. By the way, those twin emperors, I just wanted to strangle myself.
Oh my! They kind of reminded me a little bit of Game of Thrones.
Very Game of Thrones. Yes. So not the best movie of the year, but a good old-fashioned blockbuster action movie. Denzel Washington steals every scene he's in.
He is so great in this. He plays evil like no one. I mean, just because I remember like Training Day, he was so evil in that.
Oh, yeah.
in that movie, and I haven't seen him be really evil in a while, but he to me was worth the price of admission. He was my favorite part of the movie.
He'll be an Oscar nominee for that, for sure. So there you have it. Wicked, really strong recommend, and Gladiator 2, pretty strong recommend. I think that kind of summarizes it. Yeah.
Well, you're being honest.
Exactly. All right. Hey, don't forget, if you're watching the show, if you've got, or listening, you got a friend, a relative, your buddy at work, whatever it is, they'd be into this, make sure to tell them about it. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the like button and leave us a comment or a review, or maybe you've got a review of Gladiator 2 or of Wicked, and you can leave your review under our YouTube feed. Also, if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, please subscribe to the show. Big points if you leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And now it is time to welcome to the show my friend Rocky Carroll. He began his career working with the legendary Joe Papp at the New York Shakespeare Film Festival. He's done movies like Crimson Tide, The Great White Hype, and Yes Man. Also starred in shows like Rock and Chicago Hope and The Agency, but he is best known these days for his role on NCIS as director Leon Vance. Rocky Carroll joins us. Rocky, thank you so much for doing this, man. Really appreciate it. We go back. How far do you and I go back?
Mase, I remember, I moved here from the Midwest, Ohio kid, started my career as a stage actor in New York, and came out to do an audition for a TV show called Rock.
Yeah.
In 1990. So 34 years ago is when I first came to Los Angeles. And when I first became aware of Steve Mason, I think you were still doing your radio broadcast from San Diego.
Yes, I think that's probably
the-
right. That would have been 93 or so.
On the Mighty 690, you were still on that network. So early night, we've known each other since early 90s.
Yeah. And now you're on a show for 16 years.
I'm in my 17th season.
17th year. More than 1,000 episodes for NCIS is incredible. That is, as you pointed out off the air, that is, our podcast is like 400. No match for NCIS. Why do you think NCIS has been successful and so consistent for such a long period of time?
Well, Steve, I always say my running joke is if I actually knew the answer to that, I would bottle it and sell it at a very high price.
Yeah.
But it's funny. This show has now spanned 2 decades, and it's a very. I had the liberty of watching. I think it was the initial episode, the first episode. It was a spinoff from the series Jag, and
Right.
you think of all the administrations that have come and gone since NCIS started in the early 2000s. The first episode was a storyline about protecting then President Bush. I think in his first term. That's how long it's lasted. But what I always, the analogy I like to make, the comparison I like to make is NCIS and shows like it, the procedurals. These are what the Westerns were back in like when I was as a kid on television, 60s and 70s. There's a kind of simple justice that they represent. They're good guys and they're bad guys, and at the end of the hour, good usually defeats evil. And I think that formula, no matter how we evolve as a society, whatever, people still like the idea of simple justice. People still like the idea of good overcoming evil. The Gibbs character that was played by Mark Harmon. When I first watched the episode, even before I joined, when I first started having interactions with possibly working on the show, I had known Mark Harmon because we worked on Chicago Hope together. And I remember saying to him, I said, your character, it's Gary Cooper in High Noon. It's this character. He has a moral compass. He doesn't always, sometimes he loses his way, but he has this innate sense of right and wrong. And I think even as gray as the areas of justice are in the real world, people like watching, especially in television and especially on crime shows, where justice is a little more black and white. That they're good guys and they're bad guys, and at the end of the hour, those bad guys are going to get brought to justice. And I think that formula still works. And I think the fact that what we, I think about the Westerns growing up in the 60s and 70s as a kid, Gunsmoke, The Big Valley, Bonanza, all of it had this sort of simple sort of frontier justice where there was just these characters who had an innate sense of right and wrong. And so that's always been my analogy as far as why shows like NCIS are successful. And the Gibbs character, the Mark Harmon character, he was the guy in the white hat. He's Matt Dillon. He's got, so, and I think that at least that's my explanation as to why people still gravitate toward it, because we still have an innate sense and a need for right to prevail, for, this strong sense of right and wrong.
So every year that goes by, do you think, maybe this is the last year for me? I mean, I don't understand how anybody would leave the show, because you're still able to do other things in your career. And it's like having, for all intents and purposes, it's like your day job, in a way. So why would anybody leave this?
Well, it's funny. A friend of mine says, always the running joke that a friend of mine says to me, she says, you're one of the few people I know that has the Hollywood equivalent of a government job. It's like you've been at the post office for 17 years. Well, I think there are Sue, I think there are a lot of reasons, especially with artists and with athletes. Sometimes you think, like, why would an athlete leave a championship team? Why would anybody leave the Dodgers now to go to play on another team? It's like,
Yeah.
But a lot of times, especially for creatives, and I think about all the actors that I've known who were on shows that were successful. After a few years, you start to feel this sort of wanderlust, like, I need to be doing something else. Or I want to try something. I want to go down another creative road. And I think, especially for young performers, if one of your first jobs is on a hit TV show, you think there'll be more hit TV shows down the road. I've been playing this character for 4 years now. I'll move on to something else, and then I'll just get on another hit show in a few years. And then what you ultimately end up doing is spending the rest of your career trying to get back to where you were on that series. But nobody tells you that. Fortunately for me, I think I was at a point in my career where I understood that I had worked on series. I'd been a lead character on other shows. My career had spanned about 25 years. I'd worked on about 4 different CBS shows. So, and when NCIS came along for me, it was already in its 5th season. I started at the end of season 5, like the last few episodes of season 5. And I wasn't brought in to be one of the main characters, to be a lead. I felt, if I can put it in sports terms, I was brought in to kind of, you're being brought in to work, play third down. You're a third down specialist. We're going to bring you in for the nickel package. Your job is to make a play occasionally. You don't have to be the star. You are not the fountain from which all things flow, but you are going to be significant in this. I used to tell people, I said, they brought me in to shore up the defense. My job was to make a play occasionally in the secondary. And I think because of where I was career-wise, I was ready for that. Because a lot of actors and athletes also, when you're used to being the centerpiece, it's very hard for them as they get older and for them to make the adjustment to say, hey, you can be a part of something very successful, but you're not the go-to person. You're not the person that this show is revolved around. The offense doesn't flow from you, but you can still contribute. And I just got a sense from this was like, this is a championship team I'm on here. And at this stage in my life, I literally really thought, Sue, that when I joined that show at the end of season 5, that I was coming in on the tail end of a successful show. They'll probably go 7 seasons. At least I got in on the last 2 years, and at least I could say I was a part of it. That was 17 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. So I forget you're from Ohio. I'm from Ohio. What teams do you root for?
I'm Cincinnati, born and raised. So
that's right.
I was part of the Big Red Machine. Was a part of my upbringing. And one of my biggest thrills was bringing Johnny Bench to work, bringing Johnny Bench to the NCIS set.
Wow.
Because Johnny Bench, was an avid TV watcher, and I met him at a golf tournament, and I was going over to say hello to him and introduce myself and ask for an autograph. And he turns to me and he's asking me about what the next storyline is for NCIS. I was like,
oh, wow.
I was like, Johnny Bench is an NCIS fan. I said, hey, would you come to work with me someday for a visit? 2 weeks later, I got to bring Johnny Bench.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, it's like elementary school. You bring someone to class.
bring a Hall of Famer to work day is what I was able to do.
So does that make you a Bengals guy also?
I was a Bengals guy. My dad and I sat in the stadium. I believe it was 1982. At the time, it was the coldest game in NFL recorded history. It was the AFC Championship game.
Yeah.
Against the San Diego Chargers. I think the wind chill was somewhere around 52 below zero. I was at that game with my father. So the Bengals and the Reds were sort of were part of my childhood.
Well, I was at the Super Bowl when the Rams. I'm a Rams season ticket holder. When the Rams beat the Bengals, but it was funny that day. The Rams were playing San Francisco to go to the Super Bowl, and I knew the Bengals had already won and were going to be there. And I thought, oh damn, this is going to be like a replay of San Francisco, Cincinnati from years ago. But it was an unbelievable game. It was really cool to be at. I love the Rams, but I always feel bad for the team that loses the Super Bowl because they've spent a whole bunch of money. They've traveled in a lot of cases across the country. They've got hotel rooms and all that kind of stuff. And to lose is really difficult. I was on the losing side of it when I was in Atlanta for Rams Patriots, and I was so pissed off after the game. I was just angry. So I always feel bad for the losing team at the Super Bowl. So salute to the Cincinnati Bengals, who I mean, I don't know how Joe Burrow is unbelievable, and they just cannot seem to put wins together.
And I'm a Chargers season ticket holder. Because, after living for 30, I joked with my family. They were like, you're a Chargers fan? I was like, 34 years in Southern California. Too soon? I think not.
Come on,
guys. I can't fly to Cincinnati to watch a football game every weekend. But I'm staying in the division. It's an AFC team. So it's my adopted team. So the Chargers and the Bengals played each other last weekend. So I had a bunch of my Ohio friends. I took them all to the game. It was a great time. But you always think that but the fact that you have 2 teams to make it to the Super Bowl, and I have the same thing. I had all these premonitions of Joe Montana breaking our hearts once again, like he did for the last time Cincinnati was in the Super Bowl. But that experience, I mean, and like I like the analogy I make as far as for young performers, if you're an athlete, 1-2 years in the league and you're in the Super Bowl, you think that this is going to be a regular occurrence. Okay, we lost the Super Bowl this year. We'll go back 2 years from now or next year, play again. Dan Marino went to 1 Super Bowl in his entire career. So
first year, and then nothing.
So there's no guarantee, and I think it happens a lot, especially in my field, where you get early success, and again, another analogy, for most actors, if you get lucky enough in your career to be on a hit series or be in a series of movies that are very successful, you may have 4 or 5 or 6 really good years. Creative, everybody knows who you are. You walk in a restaurant, everybody, you get the best seat at the table. You're on a hit show, and that show runs 6 or 7 years. And then it could be 15 years of just trying to get back to that level again. And people don't understand. We spend most of our career looking for work. You spend
Yeah.
most of your career auditioning. So to be on a series that runs 17 seasons, I haven't been to an audition in 15 years. So I mean,
Good for you.
it's such an anomaly, and it's so rare. But I think you have to be at the moment, because there's never been a time where I've said to myself, maybe I've done this enough, I should move on to something else. I'm like, nope, I'll be here till they board up the windows. So
Yeah, I did stand up for many years, and I've acted a little bit, and I've had most of my later career has been behind the scenes being a producer. And but, you were saying that, you get your first gig as an actor. Or I remember getting my first amazing stand-up gig, and that feeling of, oh, I have totally arrived. I mean, this is never gonna end. And then I think of some of the auditions that I had where producers looked at me and said, "Oh, we're creating a show around you. This is it." And I'm like, "Oh, I can't believe this." And then I never heard from them again. So the heartbreak, I mean, I do a lot of sports analogies too, and the heartbreak is just, oh, it's
yeah.
devastating.
And I've been fortunate enough now, because of my tenure on the show. I don't know, is it maybe 8 years? I have close to 30 episodes of NCIS that I've directed also. So I've been
Yeah.
on both sides on the other side of the camera, which has been an incredible experience. And to be on the casting side and to have people who come into audition who 10 years, 15 years ago were household names, or who had their own series, or they were, an A-lister on in 15 years ago, and they're coming in to read for a part on NCIS. And there's that part of me, it's like, first of all, you want everybody to do well. You're rooting for everybody. But as actors, you understand, you have these peaks and these valleys. So some of those faces that come in, and now everything's done by Zoom. We don't even do in-person auditions anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now a face pops on the screen, and it's like somebody who was a bona fide movie star 15 years ago who's reading for 2 scenes on NCIS. You just realize how, what the peaks and valleys of this business.
Yeah. So I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. I went to Maumee High School. You grew up in Cincinnati and went to the School for Creative and Performing Arts, which in my mind is sort of like the show Fame. That's what I have in my head. It's like the Fame High School. What was it like? And do you think what kind of leg up do you think it gave you into the business, into the industry, into the craft?
Steve, I tell people all the time, I didn't realize. I think one of the things that I benefited from being a public school student in the early 70s and 80s was that most of the educators had come out of the turbulent 60s. And so most of the teachers, administrators, and the people that were now in the education field, a lot of those people were protesting it, who were standing on the stairs of Syracuse University or the University of Wisconsin, demanding change, demanding an end to the war. And now they were administrators, and they knew that the only way there was going to be real change was through the education system. And I was a beneficiary of that because, Cincinnati, Ohio at the time, especially in the mid-70s, 1974, when the school started, Cincinnati, Ohio was pretty polarized as far as racially, as far as class and race. People, there was this side, and then there was that side, and the two sides rarely met. But the superintendent of schools at that time, who decided to create a school very much like the New York City School for the Performing Arts, what he did was, instead of forcing down the throats of people that kids of all races and socioeconomic backgrounds, if they have a common goal, they could thrive. They could thrive together. Instead of trying to hit people over the head with it, he just, he created the school, and he put it in the inner city. The key to I think to the success of the school was he put the most desirable school in the city right in the heart of the inner city. So kids from the suburbs had to go through the neighborhood, through the inner city to go. And he knew that, like I said, we didn't know that we were part of a social experiment at the time.
Right.
But he knew that if kids of different races, black kids and white kids, are in the same band, or if they're in the same orchestra, or if they're cast in the same show, they're going to look at each other as equals and treat each other, and show us how people should be. And that truly was the case. So when we had a white kid from the suburbs get off the school bus in the inner city, and somebody starts messing with that kid, they're not messing with some white kid from the suburbs. You're messing with our first trumpet player, and we don't sound good if our trumpet player has a busted lip. So we got to go to his aid to make sure that he can be brought safely back to school. So that was the mindset, and they knew kids got it. So I was in one of the most racially diverse schools, in the mid '70s, where everything was merit based. If you were, the best singer got the role, played regardless of race. You're doing a production of West Side Story. There might have been, the leads may have been black and white. And that was the world that I grew up in from grade 6 to grade 12. When I graduated and I moved to New York City, I thought, oh, this is how the real world is. And I found out very quickly that where I was sort of a bubble. It was the, this is what the world should be like. But what the world really is very different. And I'm in New York City and I'm thinking, oh, this is the great melting pot. People of all races and nationalities, they get together and dance in the streets every night, right? Wrong. I had to learn it the hard way. But I think what gave me a leg up was I was in an art setting from the time I was 11 years old, and then we hadn't gutted the funding for arts programs. If you went to public school, you could play an instrument, and that instrument was provided to you by the school.
Right.
So if you wanted to learn to play the trumpet, there was a trumpet available for you to play. You didn't have to, there were funds available for the arts, to be an art student, to be a dance major, to be a musician. So I think I was very fortunate to have grown up in the time that I grew up in.
Where did you get the bug to want to be an actor?
You know what? I learned it. I tell my daughter this all the time. I was a very strange child. And I knew by the time I was 8 years old, I knew exactly what I was going to do in my life. And
Wow.
I was more comfortable standing up, growing up in the church that I grew up in. They would give kids, you would give speeches for Easter Sunday. And mine was always twice as long as all the other kids because I had and that for whatever reason. But I was more comfortable standing up in front of 300 people than I was talking to 2 people. And I always felt I was at home. I was a class clown. I was always the guy who was trying to make everybody else laugh. And that was my nature. Kids in my neighborhood used to always say to me, "You should be on TV." I thought it was a compliment, but they would just say like, "There's something kind of screwy about you." So before I got to the performing arts school, I was in my local public school, and it was an art teacher who said to me, "There's this new school that's being formed. It's a performing arts school. I think you should go there and audition." And he says, "Because I think you'll find a home there. Because if you stay at this school, you're going to spend most of your time in the principal's office." So literally, it was that was sort of when I realized that not only did I have the bug, but unlike a lot of people, there was actually a place that facilitated it that said, "Hey, here's a public school walking distance from your house that specializes in the arts." If you wrote that in a script, people would go, "Nah, it's too on the nose." But that's literally what happened. At age 11, a school that specialized, that said, "You come to this school, you're just a regular kid. You're not an anomaly." And that's where it not only did I have the bug, but I was able to nurture it and be surrounded by people who said, this is something you can make a life with.
You mentioned you went to New York and you built a theater career. There's a new film adaptation of The Piano Lesson coming out, starring Samuel L. Jackson and John David Washington, directed by Malcolm Washington. You were nominated for a Tony for your performance in August Wilson's The Piano Lesson. And he's an incredible playwright. And it seems like every Black actor would love to perform one of those iconic characters. How did he capture sort of the experience of being a Black man in the 20th century?
I tell people all the time, I'm glad I was the age that I was at that point, because I was too young to understand the enormity of what it was I was doing. It was, I was like, this is a great gig. I was 20, right out of college. Literally, I think might have been my second job out of college, was going in and reading. And at the time, I did an in-person audition, and there was August Wilson and there was Lloyd Richards, who directed all these plays. And like I said, I was this young kid who had just graduated from a theater arts college in Missouri, had been in New York all of about a year, and August Wilson he was already on the track of becoming sort of, he was this phenom. The play Fences had been on Broadway,
Yeah.
come and gone. And he and Lloyd Richards had this collaboration, writer and playwright, that was already being compared to the collaboration of Elia Kazan and Tennessee Williams. They
Wow.
were the Elia Kazan and Tennessee Williams of that era. So here I am, I think 22, 23 years old, going in to read for this, for this new play called The Piano Lesson. And fun fact, the original production of it was a regional theater production at the Yale Repertory Theater in 1987. And I played, and the role that I played for which became a 3-year sojourn with August Wilson, where he would do rewrites. We'd spend a few months away from it while August would do rewrites. We'd do another regional production. But the original production of it was the role that John David Washington is playing in the film, production that I did in 1987. That role was played by Samuel L. Jackson.
No, really?
Oh,
that's
man.
amazing.
So
That's
Sam
amazing.
Sam is now playing the older uncle of the character that he played in the original version of it. But August Wilson tapped into something that was, and it was like I said, it was just a matter of right place and the right time. And I think Lloyd Richards at that time was the head of the Yale School of Drama. He was the artistic director at Yale, the Yale School of Drama. He also ran the Eugene O'Neill Theater Center, the Playwrights Festival. And this guy who started out as a beatnik poet in Pittsburgh, who was now writing these sort of long form dramas in the style of Eugene O'Neill, made his way to the Playwrights Festival, and he and Lloyd Richards sort of found each other, and Lloyd Richards sort of became his muse, his mentor, and his dramaturg, and they ended up producing, some of the most memorable works on Broadway for this. He's had 10 plays now in a cycle that have all landed on Broadway, and I'm fortunate enough to have been a part of that journey.
So I'm always curious when an actor kind of floats from doing TV, film, and theater. If you had an offer and money was not an issue, what medium would you pick to be your number one project? Would it be film, theater, or stage?
I think I'm still a stage actor at heart. I always tell people, part of my success in Hollywood was that I never came to Hollywood hoping that I would be validated as an actor here in Hollywood. I considered myself a successful actor before I ever set foot in Hollywood. I was, I had been on Broadway, and this was just, I was going to give this a shot. And if they weren't buying what I'm selling, then I'll pack my bags and go back to New York. And so I always had that feeling. I was a working actor before I got here. And I had a fine arts degree. I had studied it as a craft, and I felt like I was a craftsman. I was like, and if it doesn't work here in Hollywood, then I'll take my toolbox and go somewhere else. So I never had that sense that, if I'm not successful in Hollywood, if Hollywood doesn't validate me as an actor, then I'm nobody. So I sort of came in with that mindset that, and I think that was, and if it doesn't work out here, I'm going back to the theater. Well, I've always still had that mindset. It's just taken me 34 years to finally
Yeah.
go back to the theater. But that would be so, and the running joke always is, you do television and film so you can afford to go back to the theater. So I'm actually in the process of trying to produce a play to go back to Broadway as a producer and as an actor. So that it still is the goal. there's nothing better than that, that the sense of being in a room with a live audience, and feeling sort of the visceral response from an audience, as a stage actor. Nothing compares to it. I love working in television and film. Now that I understand that the way you can tell the story with a camera is amazing, but the theatrical experience, sitting in an audience with hundreds of other people and experiencing the same thing and feeling those reactions, there's nothing like it. Yeah.
Last thing for you, I want to circle back to NCIS. So I always use broadcasting analogies. So I was a huge fan of Regis Philbin. And one of the things that Regis Philbin, he wore really well as a personality. Like, he was like a comfortable pair of shoes. You always knew what you were going to get. And I feel like that's a little bit like NCIS, that it's TV comfort food. Viewers know there's going to be a good story, characters they've grown to love, a certain sensibility. Really, people are inviting you into their living room week after week. There's an intimacy to it, don't you think?
Absolutely. And when I'm stopped on the streets by people, it still surprises me because when I'm not working, I'm kind of like, I'm on my way to the Chargers game. I'm thinking I'm off work, and then somebody will stop you and you realize how impacted they are by it. And they tell you that not only do I watch the show, I watch it with my kids, or I've been watching it. My grandparents watch the show. And you feel like you're a part of their lives. We have your show on when we're all together having dinner. It's like you're welcome into their homes. And I knew that going in. And I knew that Mark Harmon was already sort of when you use the term household name, that's a very specific thing. Mark Harmon was the kind of person that people invited into their households. They liked it. There was something about him, something very familiar. And I think you're right. There's something about NCIS, you know what you're getting. There's aside from the good storylines, it's infused with it has a sense of humor. It's got all these sort of elements, very interesting, sometimes quirky characters. And again, like I said, there is this innate sense of justice that, at the end, regardless of what happens in the world, everything's going to be all right. The good guys are going to fail. So I think that there's a little bit of that as well.
Chargers going to the Super. Oh, I'm sorry, Sue. Go ahead.
No, and one other thing I wanted to add to that, the fact that you've been on the show for as many years as you have, and it really is a second family. I mean, as an actor, and when you think about it, you probably spend more time with these people during a certain portion of the year than you do with your actual family.
Absolutely. My daughter was 6 years old when I started working on NCIS. She's 23 now.
Whoa, that's crazy.
And literally, and throughout the pandemic, the one constant, and as chaotic as things were during the pandemic, the one constant that I had, we were still making television. Somewhere along the way, after the first few months of that sort of dormant period where everything came to a halt, all the studios and all the studio executives realized the one thing people are going to do during this pandemic is sit at home and watch TV. So TV was we were a boom industry during the pandemic when everybody else was shut down. Restaurants were struggling. People were struggling. I was with my TV family, day in and day out for those, 2.5, this crazy period during the pandemic. We were wearing masks. We were wearing shields. We were being tested every day, but we were still cranking out episodes of NCIS.
Yeah. Okay. So Chargers going to the Super Bowl. What do you think?
Chargers are maybe a year or two away from a Super Bowl. I think Jim Harbaugh was the best thing to happen to him. I'm 7-3. I'm very happy. If you told me we'd be 7-3 at this point, I'd
jump at it. Sure.
Not bad at all. But I thought it would be a little bit more time for a real turnaround. I think there's a couple of hurdles, but I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Harbaugh gets that team to the big dance in the near future.
Yeah. I love their defense. Herbert is real. Dobbins runs the ball well. It's kind of an old school. And you get to the playoffs, and it's sudden death every game. So you never know.
I was a little worried when they let Austin Eckler go, but Dobbins has come in, and I think, like I said, and this is Harbaugh's first full season as coach there. So give a couple more seasons, and they may be the team to beat the AFC.
Well, listen, this has been great. NCIS is on CBS every Monday night at 9, where it will run for many years. We'll do this in 10 years. We'll do another one of these, and we'll talk about your 27th year on the show. How about that?
Works for me. Sue, is great to meet you. Mase, it's
Great to meet you.
again.
Great to see you. Thanks a lot for coming on, man.
Absolutely.
Hey, Rocky, can I
Yeah.
ask you one question?
Absolutely.
So when the Chargers play the Bengals, who do you root for?
I wore a Cincinnati hat and a Chargers t-shirt. And, but my joke was I always root for the Bengals, except for when they play the Chargers. So that was sort of my I tried to walk the line, but it was hard to do, especially at SoFi.
Awesome, man. Well,
All right.
I wish you luck with your Chargers and continued success on NCIS. We'll get you back soon.
I'd love to. Great to see you guys, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Rocky.
Yeah, take care.
There you have it. There is Rocky Carroll, who started his career on Broadway, and man, he's done a lot of television and film now.
What a great gig, huh? 17 years. I mean,
Crazy.
that's like, it doesn't happen.
That's
forever
forever
very
in
often.
TV series years. right?
Totally. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, amazing. And I think I said it during the show. It's like TV comfort food for a big chunk of America. NCIS, started by Mark Harmon and still going now over 20 years. I think the only shows that have run longer than NCIS would be The Simpsons and Grey's Anatomy.
Right.
Grey's Anatomy is in like year 26. I mean, what medical condition have they not dealt with by now?
And is there
Um,
anybody from the original cast that's still in it?
No, I think even the lead, Ellen Pompeo, left. She just said, she basically came out and said, I got bored with this.
I can't do no more.
I made so much money. I've done so many operations. I'm bored with the whole thing. But no, Grey's Anatomy still happening, and NCIS still happening, and probably going to go for an even longer time. So thanks very much to Rocky Carroll for coming on. Hey, thank you guys very much for watching and listening, and we will see you next time on the Culture Pop Podcast.